AskReddit by Congress Potato Kenobi. Which one of history's good guys was actually a horrible person? As long as I never see Steve Irwin, Mr. Rogers, or Bob Ross in one of these threads, we're good. I once read an article that Steve Irwin wasn't nice to a restaurant waiter. I have zero respect for people who treat waitstaff terribly. It turned out to be someone harassing him at a cafe for an autograph and photo, and didn't like him declining because he was with his family. I never understand people approaching famous people when they are with their families, especially when they have their young children with them. It's my estimation that every man ever got a statue made of him was one kinda some bitch or another, Captain Typants. Alexander Graham Bell pushed for the eugenics of deaf and hard of hearing people and was a major obstacle to fund schools for the deaf, which thankfully did persist despite this ashat. Also, Helen Keller was a super eugenicist. Not joking either. So I learned recently that Coco Chanel of Chanel No. 5 was very anti-Semitic and eventually became a Nazi spy. Edit. Spelling. On the flip side, a finer sense, Christian Dior created a perfume after his sister who was a member of the French Resistance. Rudyard Kipling, author of the Jungle Book, paraphrasing, "The only way to keep the yellow man out is to bring the white man in." Also got his son killed by using his influence to get him into the army despite his son's piss poor eyesight. Bit of a dick move if you ask me. Not necessarily a good guy, but got lots of positive attention from the release of The Greatest Showman. Apparently P.T. Barnum was a terrible person in real life. The Greatest Showman is the film P.T. Barnum would release about himself. Alfred Hitchcock was an asshole sexual predator. Tippi Hedren wrote about it in her Six Dart. She did say he was a brilliant film marker, so you can be both. Luckily, no other famous directors were sexual predators. Jebediah Springfield, or his real less commonly known name, Hans Sprungfield, the murderous pirate. He had a silver tongue. Henry Ford was so anti-Semitic that Hitler considered him a hero. Brave New World makes a whole lot more sense now. Lighting McQueen. The scene when he yells at Mater for embarrassing him in front of everyone by leaking oil. Total douche. Tinkerbell. Everybody thinks she was so cute and such a good friend to Peter, but she was a jealous psychopath and tried to murder Wendy several times. I mean, in the book she only did it once. This thread reads like the Oatmeal's greatest hits. Ned Kelly is neat, because he seems to have recognized his anti-hero status. His actions were never morally right, but it's hard to say we haven't ever wanted to do the same. IDK, I feel like a lot of Ned Kelly's actions were justified if you take his accounts as opposed to the policemen he dealt with. The truth is likely somewhere in between. There's no excuse for his early theft, but those wouldn't make him a horrible person by today's standards. Since most have been covered, I'll do a guy who was a true fucking villain who turned into kind of a decent guy. It doesn't nearly wipe the slate clean, but it's an interesting historical transformation. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Slave trader. Confederate general. Likely war criminal. First Grand Wizard of the Klan. In later years, Forrest expressed regret at his life's work. He began publicly advocating for former slaves to receive better treatment, including their ability to enter into higher education. He attempted to act upon his shame by petitioning President Grant to allow him to put down the KKK by force. Edit. My caveat wasn't strong enough, and that might be my own clumsy wording. Forrest was undoubtedly a monster in some ways, and his legacy as one shouldn't be altered, despite his regrets. At least he made the attempt to redeem himself. If we cannot change as a person after our mistakes, however diabolical, then what is the point? Might as well just go murdering. In this thread, a lot of people who were never considered good guys. Unpopular opinion. dog lover and painter Adolf Hitler did some pretty questionable stuff in the 30s. There's a statue of Oliver Cromwell in London. Loads of movies about him and how he was a brave revolutionary. Nah, fuck that. He was an evil sociopath who committed genocide on Irish Catholics and turned the UK into a Puritan dictatorship. Cunt banned Christmas and dancing. Miserable prick. Steve Jobs was a bit of an ass. A bit? You should read Small Fry. Steve Jobs was a tremendous asshole. Bob Marley. And there's a very good story to back this up that also explains how he grew to be one reggae singer of Jamaica. He had a posse of friends that would intimidate radio networks of Jamaica into playing his music, as well as destroying the alpha discs of other newer artists. IDKWTF they're called, but the copy the radio networks were given in order to play on the air. He might have been trying to promote feel-good music and peace and all that, but he was a thug when it came to getting that music out. https://www.google.com/am/w-w-w.bus-on-herald.com/2012/04/20/marley-fails-go-amp/ and at the same time gave a dude songwriting credit so that he'd get royalties from the music and be able to keep his soup kitchen open. People are so weird. Bully one guy, help another, rape his wife, help a guy keep his soup kitchen open. Fuck. Charlie Chaplin. He got married to a 15-year-old girl because he got her pregnant when she was 14. He was openly pedophile. And, from what I've read, quite an asshole. Apparently, he and Marlon Brando worked together later on, and Charlie was such an uptight asshole that Marlon Brando, of all people, had to tell him to chill the hell out. Brando, for what it's worth, is infamous for demanding ridiculous concessions from directors for his performances, refusing to learn his lines, and a number of other things. Deleted. Curly from the Three Stooges. Typically having several dogs at any given time, Curly was known to come home often with strays he found along his travels. He would foster the strays until he was able to find new homes. And when the Stooges were on tour, Curly made it a point to rehome at least one stray in each town they visited. It is estimated that Curly saved and rehomed more than 5,000 dogs in his lifetime, making him a man before his time with his humane concern for man's best friend. This is a little more niche, but Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. The guy did great things, and created a program of recovery that has saved millions of lives since its inception 85 years ago. He was also an arrogant asshole that cheated on his wife even in sobriety. Edit: this isn't here to scare away anyone that's trying to get sober. I've been sober thanks to AA for 1/2 years. So don't let this keep you away if you are struggling with your drinking. Nothing is black and white, it seems. Alexander Graham Bell. This man did not invent the telephone. Several people were working on similar technology at the same time. Antonio Meucci invented it first, but there was a court case over who got the patent rights. Meucci died before the case was settled, and Graham Bell won the glory he didn't deserve. Tony Soprano knew this and went apeshit over it at the dinner table. IDK man, when I read about Martin Luther last year, I thought he was kinda cool as he created the Protestant branch of Christianity, but I recently read about what he thought of Jews and yikes. For those of you who don't know, he got pissed when the Jews didn't want to convert to his religion and started being anti-Semitic as fuck. He wrote a whole book on Jews and their lies and said that he urged others to burn down synagogues to prove their loyalty to Christianity. He also wanted the Jewish prayer books to be taken away from them. Edit: because of misunderstandings, I do not mean Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther was a monk during the 16th century who initially started the Reformation for Christianity, and was the founder of Protestantism. Most of southern Germany remained Catholic because of a pamphlet he published entitled Against the Murderous, Thieving Hordes of Peasants after a peasant revolt trying to reduce the taxes on their fields. America's Dad, Bill Cosby. We've been watching 30 Rock in our house lately, and in a recent episode that predated the Cosby revelations by a few years, Tracy Morgan makes a joke about Cosby being a terrible person for assaulting his aunt. That was pretty crazy to hear in context today. Depends on what you mean. Judging by today's standards, I'd say most historical good guys were horrible people. Judging by the standards of their era, things become more complicated. Yeah, even abolitionists back in the day may have been against slavery, but that didn't mean they thought blacks should be treated equally. Harold Holt. He forgot my birthday. I forgot his last location. Hey, 10 minutes ago I read a sentence about doing like Harold Holt, well, disappear while swimming, to start a new life. A suspense novel by James DeLaggy, 55. Anyway, if you find him again, I hope he'll remember your birthday. That's the least the man can do. Sir John A. Macdonald. First Prime Minister of Canada. Did a lot for the country in its infancy but treated indigenous people like garbage. Deleted. John Lennon. He is basically portrayed as this selfless angel of the hippie movement, but the more you look into his life, his actions and how he treated other people close to him, you will quickly realize he is what some people would call a terrible human being. Joseph P. Kennedy, dad of John, Bobby, and Teddy, had one of his daughters lobotomized. She was likely autistic but was considered an embarrassment to the family. Rosemary Kennedy was never considered autistic. When her mother, Rose Kennedy, was giving birth to Rosemary, the doctor wasn't available, and Rose was told to keep her legs closed until the doctor arrived. Baby Rosemary was in the birth canal for about 2 hours, being deprived of oxygen the whole time, which resulted in severe learning disabilities. Most Australians think Captain Cook was a pretty good dude. I think the Aboriginals would say otherwise. Napoleon. I'm French and I don't get why people like him so freaking much here. He re-established slavery and tried to conquer a huge part of Europe, leaving literal bloodbaths behind him. Gosh, even the painting of his coronation reeks of narcissism. He's putting the crown on his own head for FCK's sake. Putting a crown on your own head really makes the most sense for a conqueror. By allowing someone else to put the crown on your head, you are saying that someone else has power over you. It makes sense in most monarchies where they have the whole divine right to rule and are crowned by the leader of the church. But a military conqueror crowns himself. Ellen. You can see it in her TV persona. Basically, all those little offhanded put-downs she does that pass for jokes are the real Ellen. She doesn't seem to be trying to make them funny either. People just take it that way because it is Ellen. She is the kind of person that is always talking shit about everybody else, and if she gets called out of it was just a joke. But you know it really wasn't. Teddy Roosevelt. Interesting quote of his. I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of every 10 are. So he was only 90% racist. Yay. Elvis Presley. He never wrote a song in his life, but his record label made any songwriters hand over half of their writing fees before Elvis would record their songs. He's credited as a co-writer on the majority of his songs. That's why Dolly Parton refused to let him record I Will Always Love You. She wouldn't sign away any of the songwriting credit or future profits from her work. She's a savvy businesswoman. Most people who are good are just powerless. Most people are complicated, and if they are in a position where they can get away with it, will do both good and bad things.